How's everyone doing this morning? Cool. Thank you for coming out. Thanks, Creative Mornings, for having me, for Rita. Nice to see so many people that are up so early. So full disclosure, I landed at 1:30 a.m. last night from New York, so I just ask for your patience and understanding if I take a snooze in the middle of the talk or something. Cool. So, as Rita mentioned, I'm an artist, filmmaker, and creative director. I've been independent for 5 years, and I work in a variety of mediums on a multitude of brand projects with agencies, direct-to-clients, film production, and then I do as much personal projects as humanly possible. And in being invited to give a talk about transparency, I thought it would be wise to start and be transparent about myself. So this is me as a kid. This is me as a cool kid at age 13. This is me as a less cool kid at age 18. This is the day after I had my wisdom teeth extracted. So. You were the first people to ever see this photo. This is me now, waking up in the morning. That's my girlfriend Allie making a cameo on the top right. This is Snuffy, who I've had since I was born and winds up in the bed still to this day. So I sleep with Snuffy. And this is a hair tie that after about 4 days of wearing my hair in a bun, I see this one woman's face of disgust. This is real talk here. Every 4 days, I'll take my hair tie out. After everything, I'll take this one out, and it'll look like that one does. And this is the pair of underwear I'm currently wearing. True story. So I hope that this talk impresses you. I hope it shifts your perspective in some way. I hope it inspires someone in the audience to hire me for a lucrative gig. And I hope it makes you like me, or at least more likable in some way. So I know Rita did an icebreaker. I've got another one for you just to kind of put everyone here in the hot seat. So we're gonna have everyone take their shirt off. I'd like you all to share the last photo on your phone and the backstory behind it, and I'll give you a minute for that. So I like this question because we're all on our phones, and what are people doing on their phones? And I decided to ask strangers on the street about this, and have gone around, and this was in New York City. And she says, this morning I took a picture of my cat shit. This was in San Francisco. It's a picture of my husband's gravestone. He's been gone 5 years. And so you really never know, where someone's at, and what they're thinking, what's on their mind, what's in their heart. That's a strand I created called White Angel. It actually made me a little paranoid. I was in Los Angeles. That's me chilling out at the spa with the cucumber water and all that shit. And I like this prompt because it's inherently real and uncurated, and therefore, to me, it's a more transparent view into someone's life than, say, their Instagram feed, which is more curated. And so I've been to 9 cities where I've conducted this social experiment and created little films, and you can view them at lastphotoproject.com. And they've gotten a couple of Vimeo staff picks and seen around the internets, which has been cool because it's inspired filmmakers from around the world to conduct their own last photo projects in their respective cities, from Slovenia and Brazil and Korea to France and the Netherlands and Germany. And so to me, transparency is about engaging people in authentic ways and finding ways of including them, no matter how big or small. How many people here agree with this quote, "We live in a more transparent world than ever before"? Raise your hands high. Is it safe to say 3/4? Keep them up, keep them up. maybe even more than 3/4. So a good amount of people agree with this quote. And you're in good company. This is from a Wired article in 2015. Dr. Nora Barnes, Director of Marketing Research at UMass Dartmouth, says people need to understand we're in a new era right now. That era is one of complete transparency. But do we really? Is this really what we're thinking? Someone's shaking their head. I don't know if we do. And I guess the thesis of my talk is coming at transparency with a critical lens and really questioning, is that the case? And I want to look at that through business, through art, through social, and I know this is a very creative community here, and I hope that as I go through these different facets, it's somewhat relevant to the artists, designers, filmmakers, et cetera, in the room. And yeah, I guess I'm not so sure that transparency is as prevalent as it is now. And then my second thesis is that the need for honest human voices is more important than ever. So let's get into this, transparency in business. I didn't have to look very far to find a couple of case studies here. And that's because corporations lie to us again and again and again. So Wells Fargo recently opened 5 million fake bank accounts for their customers. And then exactly 1 year before that, Volkswagen, as probably a lot of people know, cheated their emissions tests to make their cars more environmentally friendly. And the irony here, does anyone know Volkswagen's sub-company? It's Audi, and does anyone know their tagline? Truth in engineering. So, not to be a total downer here, but I find these things really interesting that these lies are coming up again and again. Here, Pepsi says Aquafina is tap water. Labels on bottles will be changed to clarify that their water originates from public sources. And so I think this is happening a lot of the time. These are only the ones that have gotten discovered. And I think there's a lot of things to blame for it. Something I'm interested in is how these companies or people that work in branding are considering their audience. And so the word consumers comes up a lot in creative briefs that I work on, and probably a lot of people in the room see this word come up. Even if it's not true in your case of work, we see it in the news. People are described as consumers. And I take offense with this word. I think it reduces people to nothing more than buying machines, and it just feels a little questionable to me, and maybe a little distasteful. And so this Time article asks, should we stop referring to people as consumers? Researchers say when we view ourselves and each other first and foremost as materialistic consumers, the results are a more depressed, anxious population and a more antisocial, isolated society. And in the last couple years, I feel like there's a new word that has described an audience, maybe not consumers, but a new one. Can anyone think of other words that are similar? Yeah.
Users.
Say that louder.
Users.
Users. Boom. So being in the Bay, I feel like we see this term a ton. And I get it, people are using things, and so it makes sense to describe people as users. But I would never tell someone like, oh, you're a user, to their face. To me, it feels like something that you call like a drug addict is a user. And so I think when we view people in this way as a consumer or as a user, we minimize their potential or their capacity for like full human experience. And as a quick case study, I wanted to share an internal strategy for an undisclosed meat stick company from my first job in advertising. So eating a blank makes me feel manly and cool. Eating meat is manly. Enjoying bold, spicy flavors is manly. Choosing my own snacks makes me feel grown up. It goes on and on. And I don't mean to throw this company under the bridge. This is how a lot of brand strategies work. But I think I actually grabbed this next slide from an ad agency that I was recently at. But if you talk to people the way advertising talk to people, they punch you in the face. And I'm not saying that's true across the board, and I work in advertising. It's my livelihood. I have tons of friends in the audience that work in advertising. I love you guys. I think that it's worth, for everyone that works in branding or even people that are being sold things, it's just worth questioning, what the dialogue is and what role transparency plays in that. And so I guess the question I want to ask is, what would happen if brands stopped considering their audiences as just consumers or users and treated them as people? How many people have called a 1-800 number and heard the term or the expression, "Thank you for holding, your call is important to us"? Now keep your hand up if you've experienced this after 30 minutes of being on the phone. No one has put their hand down. How about an hour? A couple of people. So I don't buy it. And San Francisco Fire Credit Union, if you're on hold with them for over 10 minutes, they'll give you a $10, essentially they'll just give you $10 for your time. And to me, that's incredible. Everyone should go have an account with San Francisco Fire Credit Union. And I feel like they really believe that your call is important to them. Like they're paying that off. Come in and try the worst meatball sandwich that one guy in Yelp ever had in his life. This is great because they're being vulnerable and honest, and they're embracing, a perceived flaw, and to me that turns to a strength, and it's more confident. And I think the same things work in human interactions, right? The more flaws we show, the more trustworthy we seem. This is a Facebook post I wrote for Coca-Cola. We're trying to get exactly 18,392 likes and 3,523 comments on this post. What do you think happened?
More.
Yeah, they overshot it. But the next day, Coke's, the client wrote us back and said, "This is the most engaging Facebook post we've ever done." So they were really stoked. We were really surprised. And after questioning it, I've got to think that the reason that people really wanted to engage is that Coke was being, in this prompt, they were just being real with them. What does every brand want on Facebook? They want likes and they want comments. And so I think that in just pulling back the curtain and being like, "Hey, we want this," people were willing to step up. It wasn't manipulative. I next would like to play a film I made for the company Blackphone, which is the most secure smartphone.
Do I think that data privacy is a serious issue? It's not on the front of my mind.
I think we are pretty secure.
I don't feel too threatened. I'm just allow. I agreed to let this app change my device's call log, including incoming and outgoing calls data. So why would they want to change my call log? Do you have any idea?
I allowed this app to record audio at any time without my confirmation. That's pretty terrible.
This may allow the app to share or save my calendar data, regardless of confidentiality or sensitivity. It's offensive.
I give this app permission to modify calendar events and send emails without my knowledge.
I give the app permission to read my text messages.
Read my text messages?
Read my text messages. What?
I'll pause it there. That woman's delivery was phenomenal. So this video got viewed hundreds of thousands of times. It got a lot of press coverage and attention. And I think the reason it did so well is that it was playing off of a human insight that we're all agreeing to terms and conditions without reading any of it. And so in its own way, the film helped educate people, even if it was kind of in a frightening, holy shit kind of way. I think that empowering people with knowledge is a beautiful way of communicating. So switching to transparency in art, which I guess a lot of the examples I show are in a direct response, I think, to capitalism or the commercialization of everything. So Banksy, and I'm guessing everyone in the room is familiar with Banksy, is a huge inspiration of mine. And I like the fact that the art Banksy makes is opinionated. I consider it really brave. It's got a queer point of view. It really feels like it's an individual speaking rather than a bunch of bureaucratic decision makers. Go to work, send your kids to school, follow fashion, act normal, walk on the pavement, watch TV, save for your old age, obey the law, repeat after me, I am free. And so to me, full disclosure is creative provocation. Marina Abramovich is a performance artist who had an exhibit at Museum of Modern Art in New York called The Artist is Present. And for those that aren't familiar, she sat in a chair with an empty chair across from her for 30 straight days, and people that came to the exhibit could wait in line and then sit down across from her and just gaze into her eyes and hold space with her. And there's a great documentary called The Artist is Present that I recommend. And to me, it's a very simple idea and concept, yet incredibly profound. And I think that what better example of someone fully disclosing themselves? The Bubble Project is by a friend and artist, Ji Lee, who simply creates these speech bubbles and puts them on advertisements around New York City for passerbys to fill out. Have you seen my nipples? I used it to download porn. And I really like that he doesn't have an agenda. He's just creating a canvas for other people to speak. And this next one is from probably 10 years ago, but it says, "I Bush." So you could probably replace that with someone else. Don't know who that would be. People are being invited and empowered to be themselves. And so regardless of what is on the speech bubble, I think it's about creating a platform that people can participate in. A couple years back, during the Occupy movement, creative partner Andy Dow and I wanted to raise awareness about the wealth disparity in America. And so found a bunch of facts and designed these infographics that we turned into rubber stamps and stamped them on dollar bills. And so this shows the US distribution of wealth, and that the 400 richest Americans have as much wealth as the bottom 150 million. And we passed these around, we stamped money, we spent it. This is the average worker pay versus average CEO pay. And you can see in the top left, that's the worker pay, and then versus the CEO pay. We like the idea of using the dollar bill as a canvas. And so those will be coming around, and I know exactly how many are there, so don't get any ideas. This is the share of income growth in America, the US distribution of wealth, and a tongue-in-cheek one, future property of the 1%. And so we took these to protests, we stamped people's money, and we also made it so that it was open source and anyone could download an EPS vector file on our website and have their own stamps made, or they could use our template to print out a piece of paper, tape dollar bills onto the paper, run it back through, and stamp money that way. And yeah, I think making things participatory and open source is really exciting and a form of transparency. And this next slide is just because it was awesome to, we got commissioned by the Victoria and Albert Museum in London to do a stamp for the Queen Elizabeth £5 note, and that was a lot of fun. But really, I believe everything's a medium. I think that the Bubble Project is very creative in that way. I think that we exhibited it with Occupy George, but to me there's a lot of potential to engage people in honest ways when we view everything around as a potential medium. And so finally, transparency and social. And it's mostly going to be social media, but I want to start by just general socializing. I hear these expressions a lot. I'm not going to lie, or to be honest. How many people have either used or heard these in the last week? Good amount. Yeah, it's a part of our culture. And I find it really funny because when I say, to be totally honest, blank, it's kind of a caveat that maybe everything I've said up until now might not be totally true. And so I'm just really interested. I think that speak has a lot of power, and so the way we choose our words affects how we interact, how we're perceived. And so I just invite, I guess, you guys to contemplate that. Yeah, I find it really interesting. Moving to social media, probably no surprise here, but studies show that people are lying on social media. And how many people would agree with the statement that they've been dishonest on social media in the last month? I didn't think anyone raised. Okay, we have one person that raised their hand, and I appreciate it. I bet there's a lot more people if I framed it in how many people curated their social media presence or chose something to share versus what not to share. Yeah, that's everyone that has a social media account. Thank you. It's natural to play up the wins and to hide the less glamorous or sexy times. Like, so right now, can I get everyone to wave for a second to me? Hi. Just gonna take a quick photo. And guess what I'm gonna do with this? Probably use it to my advantage and share it at some point. I'm not gonna be taking a photo of myself in the bathroom later on. So even that is kind of a form of, curation, right? There's this Australian teenager, Asina O'Neill, who made headlines about a year ago for quitting Instagram. She had over 600,000 followers. She was an Instagram celebrity, and she claimed social media isn't real life. She talked about it being perfectly orchestrated, self-absorbed judgment, and even gave examples in her Instagram feed where she went back and edited the captions. And here she says that she had her little sister take over 100 photos so that her stomach looked just right, and that she didn't even eat that day because she really wanted to, look just right for the photo. In this next one, she talks about how she made anywhere between $400 and $2,000 per photo that she wore designer clothing. And so I'm really interested in how there is a perception that we live in this transparent world, and to an extent it's true, but I think it's wise to not trust that entirely. And so there's a quote I want to share by Lucy Clyde, who's a UK-based counselor and psychotherapist. "We've broken ourselves into bite-sized chunks. We are infinitely more complex than a selfie or 140 characters. If we believe that's all we are, it becomes impossible to tolerate the complexity of ourselves and other people. If we deny our own messiness, we can't really connect with other people and their own messiness. And that is really lonely and isolating." And so to me, she's speaking to breadth versus depth as well, and how on social media it's easy to connect with 1,000 people or a ton of people, but it's hard to have an intimate connection, right? And so sort of with the same spirit in mind, the last project I want to share is called Selfless Portraits, and I co-created it with artist Jeff Greenspan, and it's strangers across the world drawing each other's Facebook profile photos. And it was our attempt to use social media to facilitate a genuine, intimate interaction. And so these are people that don't know each other. We rigged the algorithm so that people would be assigned to each other from as far away across the globe as possible. So these are international connections. And it was super cool to see the creativity that people used in interpreting a stranger, knowing nothing else about them. And some people spent a crazy long time on them. And it was even cool to see the more creative outside the box approaches. And so it's just fun to see, you can put yourself in the minds of the person that is doing this portrait, and they're feeling so mischievous and like, oh, I'm just gonna tweak this thing. And it's very playful and sweet, and to me, there's something very warm about it. This was drawn in the Congo. And then this next one to me feels especially intimate, knowing that they were willing to put a stranger on their body. And so what would a natural extension of that be? Can you say that louder? Tattoo, yeah, thank you. So this is a tattoo artist. And this is a guy that got a tattoo of a stranger's Facebook profile pic through our project. So that's Joey on the right and Amarildo from Sao Paulo, Brazil on the left. They've never met, and they're forever connected. And so the project is now in archive mode because Facebook updated their API, and we didn't have the energy or funds to keep the project going. But we had over 50,000 portraits drawn from 153 countries, and I'm super proud of the response that the project got. And I think that despite there being a lot of barriers and having to upload your photo, because it was a one-for-one where you had to draw someone else in order to have your portrait drawn. But we encourage people to draw like in analog offline and then scan it back up. I think that the time that took actually made it more rewarding and meaningful and less disposable than, say, like a poke. And this project was able to come to Sundance as an experiential installation last year at the Airbnb house. And it was just really rewarding to take it from online to offline and see people interact and draw these strangers in real life. And a lot of people were surprised at how much time they spent. This woman says, I thought it was going to be a couple minutes, and then I spent half an hour. It's a reminder that there's other people in the world who we don't know, but we can connect with so easily. And my favorite, heck yeah, this is going up on my wall. And so I believe people are capable of so much more than share, like, and tweet. In the industry that many of us work in, metrics are really important, and they're helpful, and it's a great way of benchmarking the success of a project. And I'm grateful for that. And I think there's more to the success of a piece of communication, more so than just what are the numbers. And I think if we only look at the numbers, we're really doing a disservice to the experience. And very last, I just want to share this stencil that I made a couple years back when I was in a creative block. And I had already made plans with a friend to go out and spray this around, to have a stencil night. And so I had to make something, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I just decided to own the creative block and make this stencil that says, I'm not sure what to say. And it was so cool to come back a couple days later, and some anonymous person had responded to me and said, it's okay. And so when in doubt, I'm a big believer in just telling it how it is, and I think full disclosure can be beautiful. And so I'll leave you with a quote by the late UK writer Quentin Crisp: everybody who tells the truth is interesting. So thank you.